Come on lads, keep it coming. I painted big skies this week. For that I need a big canvas. Straight you are. By the door. It'll be a tight squeeze, but see what we can do. Alright, hold it there, hold it there. Oh, this bit is a bit bigger, but never mind. Roll the intro. Hello, welcome back to the studio. Well, after that delivery, I think I do have to rethink things a bit. Just a bit too small, I think. So I've got my usual 16 by 20 canvas in position. Now, I've been hankering after doing a big sky painting for a long time. So I started looking at some of the lovely YouTube artists out there, and one in particular that I've been following for quite some time. I'll see if I can get his name right. Jan Hendrik Dolsma. A fantastic artist. And if you want to paint big skies and seascapes, well, his hands down my favourite. So I thought, let's see what he's been doing and see if I can follow what he's doing and see if I can make something which you can follow. Now, I have to say, Jan Hendrik has an amazing website as well and lots of tutorials. So what I'm doing is really just my experimentation. If you want to learn from the master, give his site a visit. You won't be disappointed. But there are lots of other lovely artists you can look at. Cesar Santos is a wonderful artist, Chuck Black, and of course Kevin Hill. They've all painted wonderful sky scenes. So I thought, let's have a go, see what I can do. So, you know the routine. Sit back, big cup of tea in hand, big notepad, big pencil, big sky painting.
So here's my canvas, 16 by 20. That's right, it doesn't need to be that big for a big sky painting. But first things first, let's have a look at the reference photograph. I've chosen this photograph I took some years ago down on Worthing Beach, full of lovely clouds and reflections in the wet sand. But first things first, let's have a go at putting the horizon line in. I measure up a little over a quarter of the way up from the base of the canvas. I'll use a piece of masking tape to get a nice straight horizon line. I'll also be using some of this Bob Ross liquid white oil paint. I'm going to be doing this as a wet on wet painting. And I made sure my DIY canvas had a couple of 3 good coats of gesso first in pale grey. Let's start with an old Bob Ross landscape brush. I'm going to use this to scrub on a very thin layer of liquid white. Make sure you only apply just a small amount, so that when you touch it with your finger, you leave just a trace of it. There, that's about right. I'll continue scrubbing this onto the canvas, making sure I work it in well. No dry spots. And finish off with some long flat strokes just to even out the surface. Once again, I'll do a little fingertip test. I'll check in several spots to make sure I've got a nice even coverage. That's about right. I'm using Bob Ross oil paints for my painting today, but you use whatever comes to hand. Phthalo blue, Prussian blue, and a little bit of crimson. Let's start with some Prussian blue tinted with some phthalo blue. I'll have a look at the reference photograph in a moment, and I really want a sort of a strong blue colour, a little to the cool side for the very top part of my sky. I'll take a little touch of white into it as well. As I say, use a reference photograph as inspiration. Let's try a little here, and you can see what I'm comparing it to. Not too far away. But do stand back occasionally and try and judge your work. Of course, I'm going over liquid white, so this colour will pale gently to the horizon line, which is my next colour. I want to sort of get a much more pastel colour, a soft blue tone just here, behind those clouds. Maybe a touch more of the phthalo blue for this area of my sky. I'll add a touch of white to it just to make it really super soft. Whenever you paint these sorts of sky scenes, take care to really blend your colours well. You don't want any hard lines or marks. Here you see I'm working that colour in. Looks a little on the strong side, but let's see how it blends. I think not too bad. I even quite like that slightly patchy effect. Looks like distant clouds. Closer to the horizon line, I think a soft lavender colour is needed. I go straight into some alizarin crimson with that brush, and you can see I get a nice mauve colour. It looked a little bit less strong on the palette and stronger on the canvas. Once again though, the liquid white will help to soften this effect. I work it in well. I might add a touch of blue to the left hand side, using my photograph for inspiration. That's key here really. Your photograph isn't the be all and end all. It is there to inspire you. I think I want to lighten the horizon line in this area with a touch of white. Now, stand back and make some adjustments. Only by standing back will you really see what you've been working on.
So here's the progress on my sky painting so far. Now, one thing I have to mention here is that the fact that what I see in real life and what you see on camera are actually very different. A camera's lens picks up colours that, to my eye, aren't as pronounced. For instance, this grey area through here, when I see it in real life, it's very subtle. It hardly shows at all. And yet, I know when I look at my screen monitor to the side here, this shows up as really much darker. You'll find that when you do your own paintings, if you refer back to the monitor and look at that and look at the screen, that just having your screen set up differently to mine will give you a different colour combination, different subtleties in the variations of a sky. Once again, I use my photograph as a reference, an inspiration, but I urge you don't get too sort of tied up with it. Paint what makes your heart sing, and use a little of your own imagination and judgment as to how blue, grey, purple, lavender, whatever you choose your painting to be. I think I'm fairly pleased with my background sky. I think it's going to work. Time to add some clouds.
Time for some planning. I've got the end of a liner brush just to do some sketching with. Can you pick out the cloud I'm sort of using for inspiration? That one. The key here though is I'm looking at just a few clouds. It'd be too easy to overcrowd your painting. I want maybe 4 or 5 other smaller clouds beneath it. Now for the fun part. I take a soft cloth and use my finger, and I'm going to press into the painting and just remove some of the paint from the sky. This is a subtractive process. In other words, you're wiping out the area you want to become a cloud. And it's one of my favourite parts of this painting technique. Here you get a chance to plot and plan your painting, and if you don't like it, you can pick up your 1-inch brush and just put the colour back on again. In a moment you'll see my clouds are a nice sort of pastel grey colour. I'll put in some more detail here, remembering the light is coming from that top right corner. I've got to say this is one of my favourite ways of painting, especially for a big sky painting like this. I'll take a little bit of colour here and there. I think that might be it. Again, don't overcrowd your painting. You can see here at the edges I'm very dry, and here in the centre, oh, a little of the grey-blue colour is still left behind. Here's the colour I'm going to start my clouds with, on a 1/2-inch flat synthetic brush. Titanium white and a touch of yellow ochre to make a colour that's perfect for a cloud. Yes, but I don't use titanium white until the very end, maybe. There you go. That yellow ochre and white colour looks almost white on my canvas. In fact, it looks brighter than titanium white. I'm going to blend this in gently to my canvas. Little crisscross strokes. Don't take away all that lovely detail. I want this to be a lovely floaty cloud. I'll scrub in a bit more colour and let it fade out over the grey. The grey underpainting colour is really working well for us. I was recently sent some brushes to try from Royal & Lanicle. These are synthetic fan brushes, and I said I'd give them a go, but there's absolutely no promotion or sponsorship of this video. It's just my opinion. These are soft synthetic brushes, and I'm going to use these for my blending work. You need a very soft brush for this. You don't want to move the paint so very much that you take away some lovely detail. I can tap and blend and push the edges around just a little bit. I think they're perfect for this sort of work. Against that shadowy grey area, I'm going to put another layer of cloud. Again, the same 1/2-inch synthetic brush. And I just want to press and push and dab the paint around, and don't work it too hard. Once again, a little bit of soft blending is all it needs. I'm going to use a second 1/2 inch synthetic brush for a shadow colour. I'm going to take some Prussian blue, some titanium white and a touch of Van Dyke brown. A combination of blue and brown make a lovely warm grey tone to the blue side. There. You can vary the colours as much as you want. Let's try this one. I'll use a small sample here. Stand back. That looks pretty good, but maybe a touch darker. More blue and more brown. It tends to give us a slightly greenish tone. Not too bad though, but we'll see what it looks like when I've done a little bit more work with it. Once again, loose brush strokes here and a little blending. I'll stand back and have another look from the other side of the room. I'll put in a little bit of a darker colour here. Yes, it's about the 3rd or 4th layer of paint I've applied in this area. Maybe I can do one more layer of paint. Another little cloud maybe? I'll press it into the canvas, but already I can feel a bit of a problem. I'm having trouble making these clouds stand out, and even though I'm gentle with it, I'm starting to stir things up a bit too much. That's right, now I'm mud mixing. When this happens to you, it's time to play somewhere else. I'll give my synthetic brush a wipe and pick up some more of that seascape white, titanium white and ochre. Now, an interesting technique. It's called the paint 'em like you don't care. That's right, just let the brush bump and run and jump. Somehow, the less care you take, the better the clouds look. So I'll do a little bit more of this. As you start this process, don't start tidying them up. It's very, very easy to sort of do this and then think, oh, that needs a little bit of a looking at. And when it comes to blending, be brief, be light, have some fun, and be done. Leave them alone. They'll look much better if you don't overwork them. There. I think I'll add some more of the clouds lower down, but I seem to have gotten into a bit of a ducks on a wall sort of situation here, all sort of leaning at an angle. I think I just need to lose these last 2 clouds. And as you see, it's very easy. I pick up my nice blending brush and just soften them out. Just like that, they're gone. I'll work on these smaller clouds here on the left hand side, working down to the horizon line. Again, small amounts of paint, just pressed and pushed into place. I'll add a few darker clouds along the horizon line just to really give some impact. Again, I used my photograph for inspiration. On this right hand side there are some nice long stringy doers. That's what Bob called them, and that's kind of apt. I'll pull some of these in, and then I think I'll do a stand back and have a look from the other side of the room. I'm quite pleased with my painting so far, but I can't help feeling that these clouds are sort of stacked up on top of one another, and I could do with another one here in this gap. But before then, I think it's time to play with the sea. And we'll come back to those clouds later. Let's pull off that sticky tape, and time for a top tip. Make sure you drop it into a piece of paper towel, into a little ball. If you don't, you'll end up wearing it. You'll even take it shopping with you, like I did once. Stuck to the back of my trousers. I'm going to start by applying a very thin, even coat of liquid white. Now let's have a look at the reference photograph. Notice these particular lines, how they take your eye into the distance to a very interesting piece of information. I want my background sea to look like it's going further away in the distance and coming slightly further forwards on the right. My first colours mix is a colour for the sea at the horizon line, which is actually quite a dark navy blue colour. If you don't have a mahl stick, you can try freehanding this. It'll take a little while, but if you're careful, you can do a good job. But I've got a mahl stick, one that I made, and it is very handy. I can hook it to one side and brace it with my finger at the other end, and then rest my brush against it and just run it along. Painting horizon lines is so much easier when you've got something to steady your hand, and it doesn't have to be an expensive or difficult item to make. Mine is just a scrap of wood I used to stir my paint cans with, and a hook that I used to have on the back of a bedroom door. My first one was just a piece of wooden dowel about 3 feet long and the end of an old coat hanger, held together with some gaffer tape and a couple of cable ties. Simple, worked a treat. You can see on this reference photograph how much darker the sea is right against the skyline. It doesn't actually have to be the same colour. Mine's quite bluish, whereas the original photograph was, well, a bit more green, but I think this works just as well. I've gone back to my small synthetic brush to mix up some colour to make some reflections on the sand. If you look carefully between those cloud reflections, you'll see there's nice blue tones, a bit stronger in the foreground. Don't be too worried about how neat this looks. Once again, these reflections are very distorted. They become stretched and elongated on the wet sand. As you can see, even at this stage, it almost looks as though I've got almost a reflection of a few clouds happening. More by luck than judgment, but I'll take it as a win, whichever way you look at it. But notice how I've intentionally left this area nice and dark and tapering off into the distance with a bit of a curve. Once again, I use my photograph for inspiration, but we don't have to stick to it too closely. Here's that curve again. I really emphasise the fact that I want to go into the distance with my painting, and this line here also points to the distance. So now you see why I chose this photograph. I wanted you to have a lovely long view of my seascape. I'm going to spend a few minutes just adding some detail to the sand. Maybe a little brighter here and there, and just some play, backwards and forwards, adding a few touches, taking a bit away. This is the part of my painting I enjoy most, just experimenting. As you see, anything you do can be changed, rubbed out and done again.
So my painting has progressed a little further, and I've managed to start work on the beach now and also the sea area, and it's looking quite believable. And now it's sort of at that tricky point, is how much further do we want to go with this? We can look at the reference photographs and we can start really getting into the minutiae, the little tiny details, but we risk overworking our paintings, and this is something I've been guilty of in the past. I sometimes think I should leave my paintings looking a little fresher, maybe a little less sort of polished looking almost. They look more believable, more real if they're not so perfectly groomed. I think I'm at that stage with this painting now. I'll have a cup of tea and think about it, because once I start adding all the detail on the beach, all those little pebbles and stones and rocks, I won't be able to come back and play with this anymore. I'll certainly become a mud mixer if I do. And when I think about it, do I want my clouds to be bigger, more aggressive, to fill the sky a little more? I think that's definitely a 2 cup of tea sort of decision. Maybe even a hobnob. That's a cookie to you guys in America. Right, time for a think.
I left my painting overnight to stiffen up a little. Now I can come back and add a little more highlight to my clouds without becoming a mud mixer. Once again, don't overwork it. I say this so often, but I'm afraid it's true. I'm as guilty as the next person of just doing a little bit too much sometimes. This time, instead of using a brush, of course, I'm going to use my fingers to blend. I find I can do something more delicate with my fingertips, just smudge a little bit of paint here and there, and leave a lot of lovely detail. I'll give these little feathery clouds a little burst of colour as well. I think they should be quite bright and shiny, with the sun just behind them. Once again, just the end of your fingers, all you need to do a bit of soft blending. Smudge the odd edge here and there. I think my sky's almost complete. Now, I did mention actually that I should add maybe a second or third little cloud down here. So now my painting's a little drier, I can just add 1 or 2 in. Little touch, quick smudge with the finger, and they're done. We also want to add a little touch of highlight to these little stringy doers. It was a little burst of colour, but just enough to make them stand away from the background. And a quick smudge with the finger just to settle it into the canvas. Having brightened the clouds, of course, I have to adjust their reflection with a little touch of bright highlight here and there. Where the sea meets the beach, I want to add the suggestion maybe of a little wave. Just a touch here and there with the end of the brush gives just enough detail to make it believable. Almost like a very, very small wave crashing onto the beach. I'll also lighten this background area. I think there should be another little distant wave coming in. Again, a small detail, but something you will pick up when you're painting. You'll start looking at your reference picture and thinking, I can add a little bit more. Now, time to add that detail on the beach. And for this, I want to use a very, very old crunchy fan brush, just to touch in a little colour. I start with some dark sienna, and I pick up some paint and just tap it around on my palette. Have a little experiment, see if you can get the effect to work there first. Here you see, I just add a few touches of colour, stand back and then, whoops. Oh, I thought that was a highlight. I got the wrong brush. Oh well, these things happen. Quick blend, it'll all be gone, and then I can put a little bit of fresh highlight on my brush. There. It happens to the best of us. I make the same mistakes that everybody else makes. I pick up the wrong brush sometimes. Using the reference photograph, all those little bits of detail, just things that have washed upon the beach. I'll add a little bit of Van Dyke brown here and there, just to sort of darken things up a little more. As things go into the distance, they become smaller and less distinct. I'll add some more detail here. I want to increase that sort of curve, that eye line going to the distance. I spent quite a little bit of time just going backwards and forwards across my painting, looking at the reference picture, just adding all these little touches. The more you add, the more realistic your painting becomes. I've switched to a small round synthetic brush. I want to paint some individual little rocks, a touch of Van Dyke brown and some yellow ochre. Just a few here and there, slightly bigger, obviously more in the foreground. Once again, I don't try and place individual stones and rocks, I just look for the general position and just dot them around. I step back and add a few more. I'll add a few touches of shimmery highlights to my beach as well, just using the end of my brush. With that, I think I've finished. Or have I? Yes, sometimes a second pair of eyes really helps. Terry had a look at my painting and said, "You've missed something." "All of this looks like it's sort of floating," she said. "You need to add a little bit of a stronger shadow line. Just use the edge of the palette knife," she said. And she was right, of course. As I run this along the beach, of course, it creates a lovely little shadow, and it really helps settle that detail onto the beach properly. Thank you, Terry. And with that, I think I have a finished painting. This was a lot of fun, and I encourage you to paint your own big sky seascape.
So there you have it, a big sky painting. As one of you lovely subscribers said, the sky's the limit. On the sides, paint them any size you like. But don't move, there's another lovely video coming right along for you to watch.
Okay, so you have claimed all the canvases. These are all yours, are they? I see. Well, I don't think we can quite have all of these. I need some of them back. No. Oh, I see. Right, okay. Well, I'll have them back when you're finished with them then. Give us a smile. Yes, lovely baby. See what we have to put up with.
Happy big sky painting.